There's one aspect of the civilization we know.
Imagine what it must have been like when these seats rang with the jeers and cheers of crowds that came and went 2,000 years ago.
And we don't need to explain this. We understand it because we're part of the same society.
They didn't know what Christmas was here. These long-dead crowds went shopping for their own festival.
Celebrations we don't know anything about.
And we don't have to explain this either.
But what went on here?
Where have all the people gone? Long time passing, says the song. And still we're not sure why.
2,000 years from now, will our descendants know what this place was used for? Will they know how we lived?
We'll never know. But looking back into history, we can see that however solid civilizations may seem, they're fragile, vulnerable things.
They change, they die, they leave echoes behind from which a new civilization grows.
Archaeologists have dug up the bricks and mortar of vanished civilizations, sometimes even the records, but the reasons why societies collapse are still really difficult to find.
We all depend on each other in a single society, so collapse concerns us all. We've got to ask, can it happen here? When and why? How can we avoid it?
Well, for every civilization that's gone the way of the dinosaur, there have been many theories, but often nobody knows for sure why whole societies decline. The most obvious is war. Security systems get out of hand. Defense turns to aggression, and civilizations become more interested in aggrandizement than growth. Let's look at Mesopotamia and its expansion into the Mediterranean.
The Sumerians of Mesopotamia, the civilization that gave us writing, were conquered by the Babylonians.
The Babylonians were invaded by the Assyrians from the north.
The Babylonians fought back and spawned the Neo-Babylonian Empire under the leadership of King Nebuchadnezzar, of Bible fame.
The Persians conquered the Babylonians and tried to conquer the Greeks.
The Greeks, under Alexander the Great, conquered the Persians, making a clean sweep of the Mediterranean lands and even pushed on into India's fertile territory.
And finally, the mighty Roman Empire swallowed everyone and lasted for 500 years.
Today in the Middle East, this turbulent history continues.
Are we really more civilized 3,000 years later?
Moving eastwards, we come to India and that extraordinary civilization at Mohenjo-Daro.
What happened to one of the oldest, fully developed ancient cities that's ever been found?
Mohenjo-Daro was founded 4,500 years ago and then built up till it was almost a mile across.
It was commanded by a fortress, more than 300 meters long and half as wide. In an age when a city's supply of grain was its wealth, the fort protected an enormous granary with wagon bays and loading ramps.
One archaeologist described Mohenjo-Daro's granary as being the national bank of its day. That's why it was so well protected. Reminds me a bit of Greek cities with their Acropolis.
There's a similarity, but the engineering was more sophisticated. The whole town was built over an elaborate system of brick drains. They had a well-constructed drainage and sewage system and a bathroom lined with fired brick in the houses.
They had also developed a uniform system of weights and measures, essential for trading, which they did with the countries of Mesopotamia, as well as a system of notation.
So it had a sound economic system based on a good security system. It thrived for almost 1,000 years, and then it died. Why?
Some archaeologists have thought that it was sacked by invaders around 3,500 years ago, but there are sure signs that the overuse of the city's environment had begun to undermine its economy, which in turn led to the failure of the security system.
Archaeologists infer that trees had been cut down for miles around to provide fuel and to fire the millions and millions of bricks which the city had used for 1,000 years. By the time the end came, the land lay bare. And without trees, the local climate changed, becoming drier.
The topsoil got carried away, and what was left was overworked. The soil died. It couldn't support crops.
So the people of Mohenjo-Daro exhausted their city's environment and perished with it.
By the time the invaders slaughtered the inhabitants, Mohenjo-Daro's lease on life was up. Perhaps invasion, death, and desert overtook the last inhabitants as no surprise.
That first perfect city that we know of has handed down to us nothing but the legacy of its bones.
We have already explored the civilization of Crete, the land of the snake goddess, and of that fabulous bull-headed beast, the Minotaur, and the labyrinth in which he is said to have roamed.
It might be as well to repeat the myth that has come down to us. Theseus, a Greek, killed the Minotaur, half man, half bull, who lived in the heart of the palace, with the help of the princess Ariadne. She gave him a ball of string so that he could find his way out of the maze of the palace after he had killed the Minotaur. They both left the island, whose power was broken with the death of the Minotaur. This may be a mythological explanation of an invasion, and perhaps even of a natural disaster.
Deep inside these ruins at the palace at Knossos, collapsed walls tell us that Crete, as now, had been rocked by earthquakes for centuries.
But people had always rebuilt. Then, around 3,500 years ago, a great volcanic eruption shattered the island of Thera, just 110 kilometers away, throwing up tidal waves that may have destroyed several towns on the north shore of Crete. But once more, life at Knossos recovered and went on, although we can imagine that much of the merchant navy had been destroyed, and with it the lifeline of the economy.
Which in turn would have weakened the security system. But the record shows that life carried on.
Then came destruction. 50 years after they survived the explosion at Thera, almost all of the important settlements in central Crete were deliberately burned down.
By whom?
Well, it looks as if almost overnight the whole social order was wiped out by Mycenaean invaders from the mainland. The odd thing is that almost no human bones have been found in the debris.
As though whoever built these palaces were driven off or enslaved.
It's possible society had been weakened over the years by natural disasters, but maybe the prosperity of several centuries had made the people soft, an easy target for invaders.
Well, the Mycenaeans rebuilt and carried on for several generations, till suddenly the great palace at Knossos, that monument to the glories of the ancient world, was burned and never rebuilt again. The conquerors were conquered in their turn.
Only the ruins remain.
That and the myths they left behind. Legends of a fabulous people, larger than life, whose powerful traditions and beliefs have been the inspiration of artists through the centuries.
War, more war.
Interspersed by an uneasy peace.
Nearly 2,500 years ago, Athens joined with other Greek city-states to fight the Persian Empire.
In time, Athens became in effect the capital city of the alliance. And, like most capitals, Athens' economy prospered and grew as it traded with its hinterland. In addition, tribute from the other city-states poured in for the war effort, and inevitably some of it was misused.
The Parthenon was built around this time, along with the western ceremonial entrance to the Acropolis. Here was the age of Athens' mighty leader, Pericles, and the city's age of glory, of marble temples, concert halls and theaters, gymnasia and public baths.
But the other cities in the alliance at least had the satisfaction of knowing that their taxes also supported the Athenian fleet, which protected all of them. Until the peace gave way to 27 years of war.
Athens and its allies faced the military might of Sparta, The economy slowed down, weakened by war.
And a plague, which killed a quarter of the population. Among the victims, their leader, Pericles.
Battles on land, battles at sea, all the city-states were weakened.
And as so often happens in times of panic and fear, the Athenians listened to bad advice. Fear prompted revolts, even betrayal to the enemy by one faction intent on destroying another.
And Athens lost a sea battle. Its ships were sunk, and so it lost access to its food supply. The city found itself besieged. In the end, its rival, Sparta, destroyed the league on which Athenian power was based.
Power corrupts. Soft living leads to rot. The Athenian Empire tumbled down just when the wealth of public building, combined with achievement in literature and the arts, showed a civilization at its peak. Nevertheless, Athens has left to us an enduring legacy, which we have explored in other programs. In the arts, in literature, in science and medicine, and in the very art of government. The process, which we still know by the Athenian word, democracy.
We have seen something of Egyptian life, from the building of the pyramids to the imposing statues of Ramesses II. And as the tomb paintings tell us, even in the most prosperous times, there were wars. Egypt sent armies into Sinai, south to what is now the Sudan, and west against the Libyans.
But Egypt's own wealth in the prosperous Nile Valley made Egypt itself a tempting target.
And a difficult country to defend. How ironic that its natural